Hello and welcome to the Angelati studio. I'm now joined by Egbert Laege, who's the CEO of Powernext. And Egbert, just before we start, can I ask you just to tell us a little bit about yourself and what Powernext do?
Yeah. So I'm in the industry, energy industry, since 15 years in the trading business, and in my role as a CEO of Powernext, I'm running the gas market offering of the EX Group. EX Group, under the brand EX, is offering coal and probably predominantly known for its power futures, and since January 1. We have EX as the majority owner of Powernext, and by that EX Group assign all the gas activities within Europe to Powernext. So we have the gas offering for the group in our hands.
So on that side of things, because we are talking about gas and we are at the EMART conference, there seems to be a discussion about some new perspectives needed for the gas market. Can you just bring those to life for us a little bit more? You know, why are we discussing new perspectives? Some of them, to me, are already obvious, but there are probably some more nuanced ones than that.
I think as a gas trading community, we are very proud to have these discussions here right now, because it took quite a while in comparison as well to power that the trading markets were seen as a facility, as an efficient instrument to develop the markets. We have lots of discussion about security of supply, about infrastructure. Do we have enough, or is there ample supplies? And I think the trading community, the trading instruments can provide an efficient way to allocate infrastructure to balance demand and supply. And so therefore we welcome, of course, that we have in this very trading specific venue the questions about the perspectives, and we are happy to contribute to those.
And what do you see as, so you know, what you've described makes a lot of sense in terms of the structural nuances and everything, but you know, the people are talking about new perspectives that are needed. What are they?
I think the new perspectives are very much clustered under the element of security of supply. Security of supply then covers as well, is there sufficient infrastructure? What is the impact of LNG? I mean, should we provide LNG infrastructure? Do we have already enough? And all of that cluster, that are the
and
new...
I would imagine how you pay for that capacity, because if LNG, you need
new infrastructure,
and
you need
kind of infrastructure.
But at the same time, when you look today, you have LNG infrastructure which is underutilized. So it's always the question, so what do we have today? What is our assumption what we will have in the year 2020 and beyond? Will there be sufficient supplies in the North Sea? Our domestic production in Europe, if you want to say, that is going down. At the same time, shale gas, I mean, is that an option for Europe, yes or no? All of that is clustered around those questions, and in particular with the unbundling of the storage. Now we have the situation that, given the low energy, the low gas prices and the summer-winter spreads being so low, the filling level of storages are not as they were like 10 years ago when we had the bundled
it's
sector.
like a leaner supply chain, effectively.
Well, coming from the trading part, I would say the prices give the signals. It's just now leaner. So at the time being, with the way the market participants see the market, it is an efficient use to fill the storage at the level that it is filled, and we see ample supply. So if prices start to move, filling rates will start to move. But of course, I can understand that storage operators and grid operators feel uncomfortable with having infrastructure sitting in the system but not being ready to use in case it turns out to be very cold in 6 weeks from now, whether there is
that is
sufficient
effectively
supply.
a situation where you have underutilized infrastructure, and if I'm there owning this infrastructure, I'm like, why am I paying for this? Is that
How
really
can I, when I own the pay, it's how do I get paid for it as a customer? Why am I paying for that? But at the same time, we have the question on is there sufficient infrastructure? We see in Europe, we see ourselves that supplies from Russia. Of course, they're still there, but Russia is supplying as well into China. LNG is becoming a global, let's say, a global commodity being shipped around, but will there be always sufficient LNG coming into Europe? Those are the questions the industry is focusing around. And in that bulk of questions, of course, our let's say our opportunity to provide service, to provide solution as an exchange is of course limited. We won't be the ones who import the LNG, of course, but in terms of products that we could provide on our platforms, probably can offer some kind of hedging instruments for certain specifics that may come with some of the contractual elements of the LNG imports, and that's why
because that would bring me on to, it's like going, surely there's a well, it seems to me like an issue around transparency and risk as well. I mean, you've said LNG a lot, but you know we only need to look at across the Atlantic to what shale has done in America, and you know that surely must be something that Europe is looking at as well, because you know there are shale reserves in Europe. So how do you create an environment for that sort of transparency? Because you know I would imagine if you're trading, that it must be one of those things where actually I need to understand this a little bit more, and where are we going with it?
Yeah, and that's where the price transparency helps a lot. So if you have done an investment, then you probably want to hedge it, and then basically you would like to see products available that you can, at least probably not for a 20-year, but at least for the first 3 or 5 years, have something where you can, let's say, a platform where you can hedge, and not like a bilateral talk, but really something that is resembling the market, and that's what we are trying to offer. And if you have some, I would say, basic interest, basic liquidity, then of course the markets get attractive for players that do not have a direct, let's say, asset impact, but have an interest in that market, have an interest to pick up the risk, and of course play with the volatility that is given. And I see if Europe's price building is between Russian pipeline gas pricing, Henry Hub potential LNG pricing, and Asian demand, you can see that at certain times, let's say, prices can move, which is a huge risk for the players, for the physical players here, where they would like to hedge it, but as well an opportunity for those companies who are in the market just for trading, and that is giving the right and efficient mix that the European gas industry and gas community would need. And here we are, that's our interest, and there we are, like everybody else, trying to understand and listen to everybody involved in order to make a good product offering for that.
So what would that look like? I mean, if you take all those bits in, I mean, what would that product, what would that solution look like?
It's not a one single product. It's a whole portfolio of products.
To different types of risk areas and so on.
Yes, it could be. Those are products that are covering pretty much the short term, the shorter end, being products within day, intraday, balancing products, day ahead, week ahead. So all where you really, if you have a physical position, where you find something to balance it out, but as well the longer term products where you can hedge your risk, and the structure that is building up in Europe right now, that you have some hubs like the TTF hub where there is a good liquidity, and here you can hedge your long-term risk. But if you are in Italy, for example, then there is you would need as well a product that at a certain time you can bring this back, so that you have locational spread products, maybe not for the entire time, but for the shorter time period, so for the month and the next year, where you can trade the differences then in order to bring it back to the location where you really are. Yeah. And that is something what we can provide to the market, that there is sufficient liquidity in those hubs, let's say central hubs, lead hubs, be it TTF or NBP, and then there is an opportunity to bring it back
They
to the
almost
other.
provide a service platform in a way. That's kind of the way
yeah.
I'm kind of thinking. And as we are at EMART in Barcelona, in Spain, let's bring it back down to locality and so on. Just sort of briskly in the sort of short time that we've got left. I mean. And you touched on liquidity there for a second. It seems to be, certainly in the conference agenda, there's like some of the best practices need to be applied to help develop liquidity within the Spanish market. And again, can you just bring to life a little bit about what these local issues are here and what some of those best practices are that can be brought to bear?
So the lesson learned from all the other European countries is that the market started to develop once there was a virtual hub. And so that people agreed, okay, that is the place where we are going to trade, and here are the rules under which we are going to trade. And that is still missing. In Spain. So what we need for that is a joint effort from the regulatory bodies, from the grid operators, but as well from the market participants, kind of to set up this. And during this process, we are happy to share our experience as well, because we have gone through these, be it in the German market, in the French market, basically our home markets, but as well in the Belgium and very recently in the Italian markets, engaged in this discussion and helped to set up something. And once this framework is there, then you need to build the community of traders around. Of course, it's predominantly starting with the domestic players and those who have an asset, and then collect like 10, 15 companies that have an interest to trade there. And once then you have some sufficient liquidity, have good spreads, have some market depth, then more and more companies and counterparts from our existing client base or from all over Europe would be then interested in joining the market. And then the map you can see that you have, let's say, a fairly liquid continental Western European gas hub, and you always have Iberia being a little bit standalone, being concerned about security of supply, have somewhat weaker connections into the rest of the continent, could then probably be helped. Not as a pure alternative to infrastructure investment, that's not what I'm saying, but making more efficient use of the infrastructure that's already there.
It provides a short-term thing, and it's to take an analogy from the IT world, the more you connect things up, ironically, the more stable everything becomes.
Everything becomes, yes. Yeah. And if you have a very stable and reliable price index in Spain, that will, of course, then facilitate as well LNG cargoes to arrive here, because I mean, once they are floated and are coming, let's say, in the direction of Europe, whether they are going to France, England, Holland, or Spain, is then a matter, let's say, how are the prices, and the more transparent, the more visible they are, the better it is for Spain.
So, as we come to the end, can I ask a really stupid question? And it's my job to sometimes ask these stupid questions. If we've done this everywhere, and I find this as well within other sectors, is like, why can't Spain just take the standards that have been applied everywhere and just cookie cutter and put it in? Because surely you don't want to reinvent the wheel, because one of the points is about being on the same level so that you can interconnect, and then that interconnection builds resiliency in its own right. I mean, am I oversimplifying it, or is there something I've missed?
Well, I think this is a little bit oversimplified, but there are for sure many elements that can be done in fairly similar ways. But nevertheless, there are always some, let's say, technical specificities in the national systems. So where, let's say, where you have to stabilize the system. And there you need to have very specific requirements. But it's always the big question, how, let's say, to what extent is this a national market specificity which needs to be recognized, or whether there should be, let's say, a further road of harmonization?
It's a vision thing about,
Yes.
do we believe that interconnectedness builds resiliency effectively?
Yeah. And but clearly the trading community appreciates harmonized, standardized conditions.
Listen, you're preaching to the converter. I love standards. It's one of those little known facts about the Industrial Revolution that it really kicked off when people started standardizing nuts and bolts. Before then everybody had their own. And
that's true for the energy sector as well. But like with nuts and bolts, they're different sizes. But still, I mean, you don't have one fits all. You have different ones.
Yeah.
But probably standardization helped to reduce the diversity.
And on that nuanced note, we must leave it. Thank you very much, Egbert, for joining us in the studio, and thank you as well for watching.
Thank you.